I'm going to ask, after I say a couple more words, just for everyone to introduce themselves, just so that we know who else is on the line. No topics are off limits. I hope that you will engage and bring up issues as we go through these slides. It's not a one-way presentation, so let's feel free to jump in whenever clarifications are needed. The only thing I ask is that you are constructive, and if you have complaints, that the complaints have options attached to them, so that we can begin to address them and to better understand them. Next page, please, Fatma. Let me start with this slide before we have everyone introduce themselves. This is a slide that was compiled from the responses that you've given in 2020 as to where some of the issues are with your fund. As you can see, the greatest amount of issues seem to be around resource mobilization, and I think that means or what we took it to mean was the fact that resources are in the process of being finalized, and there's a need to go out with resource mobilization and capital raising. Project implementation, we know the difficulties at the bank on doing projects and fulfilling disbursements. Staffing constraints are just among the things that you have told us are issues, and so we captured this in this chart. We'll come back to it. We'll talk about it further. Next page, Fatma. Stay there, please. And so let me take this opportunity just to quickly have each person introduce themselves, the fund that you're associated with, and possibly if there is an issue that was highlighted on this page, if you want to talk a little bit more about it up front, we can listen to you. So Fatma, if you can you take the presentation off for now? And I'll just call out as I see them on my screen. Please introduce yourself, the fund you're with, and then we can go from there. Mike, let's start with you.
Okay, so you're starting with me?
Yeah, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Just a brief introduction.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I'm Mike Salawu. Just 1 second. Let me just switch off this one here. These days you're on many different calls at the same time. Okay, so my name is Mike Salawu. I'm Nepal IPP of Trust Fund Manager. I've been doing this now for the last 3 years, I would say. And I've also managed the same fund a few years back, I think in the early age. As a second fund manager after Lamin Barrow, who was the first one. I came as a second. That's back in 2007, all the way to 2009 or so, or the beginning of 10. And then, so I have that experience from then, and then also now an interesting fund. That's one of the first special fund of the bank, and we've been, doing mainly project preparation for regional infrastructure projects. On the 4 economic sectors, transport, energy, water, and ICT. So this is one of, if not the only, cross-sector fund that the bank has that does regional infrastructure projects. So currently, I'm also in charge of ICA as a coordinator for ICA, which is an advocacy platform that the bank has signed up with to enhance things on the software side in mobilizing funding for infrastructure. Yeah. I'm division manager in the bank, PQ3. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mike. And Mike, you noted in your responses last year that resource mobilization and staffing constraints were issues.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that those are still issues.
There's still issue, and actually they have compounded now after this year. So I'll be glad to have that discussion with you today. So it's a critical bottleneck for us. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Francois.
Yes, Norman.
For you, Francois, you might be the newest trust fund manager on this platform. So welcome to Bank Trust Fund Management.
No, thank you for that. I'm not sure whether I'm the trust fund manager or the trust fund task manager, because we do have a trust fund manager who is a consultant that you know very well, Henriette. Mm-hmm. And for some, contract management issues, she's taking some days off, but she will probably be back with us very soon. And I am the task manager of the fund. So I'm basically based in the AHHD director's front office and providing support to her. So I don't know whether other colleagues that are on the call are more trust fund managers or more trust fund task managers, but it doesn't really matter. The most important thing is to have this conversation, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for that. So I'm stepping in for her while she's away, taking a few well-deserved break days. So my name is Francois Wonge. I'm the Chief Youth Entrepreneurship and Finance Officer in the AHHD department, which is the department dealing with human capital, youth and skills development in the bank, sitting in the AHDP complex. I'm based in South Africa for now, but I will be relocating to our headquarters, to Abidjan, sometime next year. So what can I say? My background, I've been in this business for the past 19 years. And before joining the bank, I was managing an impact fund that was mostly controlled and with main contribution from the Nordic countries. It was under what we call the Nordic Plus cooperation framework, but also including not only public but private donations and contributions and participations. It was, based in Copenhagen, in Denmark, but open to all the Nordic countries and Nordic Plus countries, including the Netherlands, but Sweden, Finland, and all the Nordic countries that we know. It was called the Sahel Peace and Stabilization Impact Fund. So it was more market-based than what we are doing at the bank. This is pretty much donors-driven, and sometimes, trying to strike the right balance between our development objectives and the financial sustainability, as we might all be used to. It's something that we have to pay attention to, and something that we always have as a constant discussions within our own YEI MDTF fund. So our fund, from the name, as you can understand, is really, I would say, the financial arm of the Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy of the bank. As you know, in 2018, the bank, 2017, actually, the bank decided to set up the fund in order to support the implementation of the Jobs for Youth in Africa.
And sorry, Francois, not to cut you off, but just a quick intro. So
yes.
Thank you.
So what are we doing right now?
Not of the fund, but just of yourself. So I think we're good.
Ah, good. Thank you.
Yeah. And you and I will be seeing a lot of each other because we chair the TRC for the YEI fund.
Ah, yes, that is true.
Yeah.
Roderick, I have something for you, many things for you actually. I will come back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anita, CMDTF. How are you, Anita? We can't hear you. We still can't hear you. You're muted.
She's muted. She's muted.
There you go.
Sorry.
So, Anita, are you the manager of CMDTF?
No, I'm the trust fund coordinator.
You're the coordinator. Okay.
I'm not supposed to be here.
No, you can be here. So you work with Albin.
Absolutely. So Albin is the task manager, and he is also a principal investment officer with the PIFD2.
Okay.
So I'm the trust fund manager since no, trust fund coordinator.
And who's that little gentleman back there? He's your assistant.
Yeah, he's the assistant.
All right.
Anyways, so I started with the CMDGF, the Capital Market Development Trust Fund, back in March 2020. So CMDGF is the bank's facility to develop capital markets, capital markets and enhance institution capacity to do so, and also to support all of the inclusive and economic growth through the capital market.
Mm-hmm.
So we are fairly new, you know, as we were established back in December 2019, and we are focused on West Africa, for instance. But yeah, we have 5 projects in our portfolio so far.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to the difficulties we have, from my experience, really, it has been, I know people talk about resources mobilization, but from my experience, it's the procurement process that really caught me off guard.
Yeah.
This year, you know. So yeah, that's
you said in 2020 it was sorry, in 2020 it was project implementation disbursement. So I'm assuming that's still an issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Alban answered that.
He did.
Yeah, I think he did. But like from my experience, really, yeah, it's the procurement issue, which really are super lengthy.
Yeah.
And nebulous and frustrating at times. But yeah.
We have all been there, and I'm sure you have some people that can commiserate with you on this call. So thank you and welcome.
Thanks,
Next,
bye.
let's do Jonas, an experienced fund manager amongst us.
Okay, thank you very much, Roderick, and thank you and welcome, colleagues. Yes, an experienced fund manager, by the way. Okay, I managed the Agriculture Fast Track Fund, a fund provided by USAID, Danida and CIDA. That fund has been running from 2013. I took over the management of this fund in June 2015. But as at end of 2020, it came to a sunset. But the donors were very generous. They gave us 7 months to do the winding down with the lined up activities. So we were able to do that. At this point, we are trying to produce the final report of this fund, and that is expected very soon. We're just waiting the financial aspect because the final audit is on. But let me say something about the fund itself. It is one of the trust funds in the bank that a lot of the beneficiaries have really done well in terms of leveraging, because what it does is to provide funding for studies that will enable the beneficiaries to generate technical content that they could use to formulate bankable proposals and look for commercial funding. So on the average, for every single dollar we give as a grant, we leverage about $26 in commercial funding. So the beneficiaries from 10 countries in Africa, overall, we funded about 63 projects. So, but now we're just waiting for the final report to be ready and sent to the donor. Actually, the draft has been shared with the donors because they were eager. So that is where we are with that fund. Thank you, Roderick.
Thank you, Jonas. And from 2020, you said resource mobilization and project implementation. That's probably when you were thinking of maybe continuing, right? I guess resource mobilization is not an issue now.
Well, we cannot be talking of resource mobilization for a project that has where we are doing the final audit.
Yeah.
So it was because we wanted a continuation. Actually, the donors wanted to see how the bank was interested in mainstreaming the project into their bank project because of the overwhelming impact it created. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Jonas, and thanks for joining us today, because we can all benefit from the experience you've had with a successful fund.
Okay, thank you.
Marie-Claire, AFFM.
Yes, thank you very much, Roderick. Marie-Claire Karihangabo, I'm the coordinator of the Special Fund, Africa Fertilizer Financing Mechanism. It has been actually functional since 2018, and myself, as the first substantial coordinator, I joined November 2017. So we've been operating since actually 2018. And the Africa Fertilizer Financing Mechanism, actually, we do implement projects, mainly trade credit guarantees to SMEs, and we've been implementing projects. Now we have like 3 projects in Tanzania, Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire. So for challenges, yes, in 2020, we mentioned staff issues, resource mobilization challenges, but now maybe we have additional challenges which is about implementation, and I guess we will discuss this once we get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie-Claire. Ayanle, I'm probably mispronouncing your name. Ayanle.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, great, thank you. So my name is Ayanle, and you've pronounced it right. I mean, spelled it right, so it's fine. I'm from the Environment and Client Finance Division at the bank. I work on the Global Environment Facility, as well as the Adaptation Fund. So I coordinate both funds. So both of those funds are not, technically speaking, they're not trust funds of the bank. Those are external funds, but we have a portfolio of projects that we coordinate, that co-finance the bank's operations. Now then, two issues that I can maybe raise. The first one has to do with resource mobilization, pretty much linked to pipeline development. And the second one has to do with reporting to the funds. So those are the two key issues, I would say, for the GEF. And then for the Adaptation Fund, again here the main issue I can speak about is the resource mobilization issue. Again, the pipeline development. So there are specific issues that we're facing for each of those two funds. So maybe I can touch on that later on. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ayanle, and welcome. Even though it's not specifically a trust fund, you are welcome to this community because you face as an implementing partner, you face some of the same issues. Abdelkader.
Thank you very much, Rod. So I'm Abdelkader. I am technically the partnership coordinator of the Making Finance Work for Africa partnership. So we are we have existed for a number of years now, more than 10 years. And we're not, again, technically considered a trust fund. So we are a special fund. So we're not a grant. We don't provide grants, and we're not an implementing agency. What we do is we are a platform for advocacy, knowledge and research, and also we do capacity building and other kinds of technical assistance, really to promote financial sector development in Africa. So yeah, I've been making finance for quite a number of years, but I've took on the role of the partnership coordinator since July of last year. So yeah, I mean, you know, the issues that I have already suggested in the past, they still are today. So predominantly resource mobilization. I won't lie to you, Rod.
And staffing as well, you pointed out.
Yeah, and staffing as well. I mean, they're both interlinked, right? I mean, in the end of the day, it's the resources that will allow you to staff your team adequately and And yeah, I won't lie to you. I mean, it's been a very difficult year, particularly with the COVID implications to donor relationship and the changing priorities and competition, as you mentioned in the introduction, and the different options that are available really for the donors. I mean, we have loyal donors. They've been supportive for many years now. The European Investment Bank, the German Development Agency, Agence Française. We also have the first African institution supporting making finance in Afrexim Bank. But we also lost some donors over the past years, and I hope we delve a little bit more into the resource mobilization, and specifically really what's really impacting us, since we are predominantly supported by European donors, is the sanctions issue and the EU restrictive measures that are also impacting funds. I imagine they're impacting other trust funds as well, and not just us. But yeah, I mean, thank you for the invitation, and greetings to all.
Okay, thanks, Abdelkader. Sheila?
Hi, Rod. Hi, everybody. My name is Sheila Okiro, as you can see, and I'm the coordinator of the Africa Digital Financial Inclusion Facility. We sit out of the Financial Sector Development Department, and our mandate really is to support investments that seek to leverage technology to drive financial inclusion. Though we sit within the private sector arm of the bank, we have a cross-cutting, cross-sector mandate and continental mandate as well, because we serve both private sector beneficiaries and public sector beneficiaries. We are pretty young as far as bank trust funds go, given that we formally launched in 2019 July. So that makes us just slightly over 2 years old. I must say it's been quite a ride. It's been really bumpy, and really because of the expectations. We're a special fund comprised of, we're supposed to have some funding from the bank's normal operations, as well as a special fund that's resourced by various donors. We have a multi-donor trust fund. That, of course, comes with its own complexities. Abdelkader has mentioned one of the issues we have, which is sanctions. Very complicated. We have American donors and we also have European donors, so everybody comes in with different requirements. It's not an easy situation to manage. It remains outstanding. Resource mobilization is really, really major for us. The expectation is high, and the funding is not there. With a continental mandate, we don't have a defined program approach. So, we feel like we're always chasing a curve or the other. Now, this is critical for us, this engagement. And I think, you could see I checked quite a number of the boxes.
You did.
Yeah. Clarity in terms of
project implementation and TFMS were things that you also checked. So.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but almost like no induction. Yeah. Just get on with it. And also in terms of the clarity of the expectations of the different roles between us and firm, I think that is not clear for us as yet. Yeah. So any, efforts towards getting us into a more conducive situation is welcome. Thank you.
Listen, thank you, Sheila, and thank you for the comments and the work that's or the tolerance that you've had through this bumpy time. We've been there with you in some of those, but you're obviously doing the hard work. So Cecil, Adrify, one of the newer funds. Cecil, you're on mute.
Yes, I am Cecil. I coordinate the Africa Disaster Risk Financing Program from the front office of AHFR. Now, the Adrify works with the regional member countries to enhance their resilience to the shocks of climate change. Now, in order to implement this program, we have established the multi-donor trust fund, which we call the ADRIFI MDTF, for which I'm the manager. And it's a new fund, as I said. It was approved by the board early this year. And so we are still at the beginning and almost about to make the first disbursement from the fund. So I guess it will be interesting for me to hear from others. What are some of the challenges that they have faced? The teething problem we have at the moment is the fact that we had a staff of firm who was supporting us by name Ada, but I think she left the bank recently. So there's a kind of a vacuum as to who do we deal with in firm, who will provide the necessary support at a time when we have these teething challenges. So I guess I will stop here, and then it will be interesting to hear from us going forward how we can get that support from your outfit. Thank you very much.
Super, thank you, Cecil. Just to answer your question really quickly is Alistair Charnock is your person now that Ada is gone, but we will make
What's the
that
name?
Alistair Charnock. He handles the agriculture department.
Okay, thank you.
So, but again, we'll make that introduction more formally. But thank you, Cecil. And I don't think you were even on the chart last year for 2020. So, the issues that you're pointing out are new ones. Maimuna Nalubega, which fund are you with, Maimuna?
Yeah, good afternoon, colleagues, and thanks, Roderick, for inviting me. I am supporting the African Water Facility. I wasn't there last year because I'm just actually acting coordinator. You might have heard of the sad demise of the former coordinator, the late coordinator of the facility who passed away at the beginning of the year. So since around February, I've been acting as the coordinator, and hopefully in the coming few weeks, we shall have a substantive coordinator. So I'm here actually for a very brief interaction, and I'm willing to share with you some notes on the African Water Facility. The facility has been here since 2006. It is a facility owned by the African Ministers' Council on Water as a special fund, and the bank is hosting it on behalf of the African Ministers' Council on Water. We are focusing on investments in water resources management, water supply and sanitation. Water resources management across the different water user entities, and our niche in the last 7 years, 10 years or so has been on project preparation. We also support small investments for WASH, water supply and sanitation, and also water for agriculture. Briefly, we are supporting projects across the continent, and we have supported over 100 projects. Currently, our portfolio has about 26 active projects, and most of them now on water supply and sanitation. We have new initiatives that are being supported by some donors, which is a breath of fresh air, because one of the challenges, like all other trust funds, has been in resource mobilization. So last year and this year, we've been fortunate to have the Nordic Development Fund and the government of Denmark contributing to the facility and helping us to remain afloat. The biggest challenges are, again, the resources to the fund. We are increasingly having donors coming in with earmarked resources, although ideally the fund should be receiving resources that are not earmarked, and we should be supporting the strategy of the facility. So the resource mobilization is a challenge. We are getting more earmarked funding, which skews our portfolio. We are no longer able to meet or to address all the broad issues of the water sector. We are mostly focusing now on what the donors are interested in, which is part of the strategy, but then we are not well balanced. The other challenge related to the resource mobilization is that of staffing, because many times we rely on project staff who are financed from the resources in the fund. And if the fund is not getting adequate resources, then getting staff to do the work becomes a challenge. A bigger one that is happening is the integration of the water trust funds in the bank into one. Traditionally, the water department had three trust funds. That's the Rural Water Supply and Sanitation Initiative, or RWSI. We had the Multi-Donor Water Partnership Program, and then we had the African Water Facility. But for the last 2 years, these three trust funds are being merged into one, and they will be all their functions will be under the African Water Facility. So that means it's a bigger challenge. We have broadened functions, and staffing still remains an issue. And of course, under COVID, not only resource mobilization is a challenge, but also the implementation of our ongoing projects has been constrained because of the kind of issues that everyone is facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maimuna, and welcome to this discussion. Timothy Kumson, Green Climate Fund. Again, not a trust fund per se, but an implementing partnership that is important to the bank.
Hi, Rod. Yeah, you're right. You're right on that. GCF is not technically a trust fund, and it's mainly a fund that provides the opportunity to the bank to sort of diversify its financing exposure to the GCF, and also tap into concessional finance for our RMCs to fund their climate-related activities. But it is always good to be on the TF platform to learn from and to share experiences on similar operational issues and procedures for resource mobilization, particularly because we all do resource mobilization.
Yeah.
And the greatest challenge with the GCF, I think, I always remember what Valerie said when we were, negotiating the AMA, and that is the Accredited Master Agreement and the Funded Activity Framework. That this is an elephant, it's a different elephant altogether. And the greatest challenge that we are having now is alignment of GCF policies, procedures with the bank policies, particularly where they conflict. And what I would say is that it's an issue that we are preparing to seek guidance from SMCC. So I don't know if I can talk a lot about it now, since we don't have the guidance from the SMCC yet, but the management, senior management is looking into that. GCF started operation in the bank around 2017 after the completion of the accreditation in 2016. And the Accredited Master Agreement was signed in November 7, 2018 between the president and the then executive director. Currently, we have about 380 million mobilized since 2018. And we have, at the end of this year, will be over 500 million that has been mobilized, as a way of a partnership with the bank, and then also the bank, having some of its exposure transferred to the GCF in that sense. And we are looking forward to also having some open forum in October to share some of the challenges. And we will be very, very, glad if some of the tax fund managers here could also come and share their experiences, particularly, when it comes to policies, your trust fund policies and the bank policies, and if there are some experiences that you could share with us, regarding that.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. Let us now, firm staff who are also managing trust funds, you can take your firm hat off, although I've called on you last, but please just introduce who you are, just so that everyone knows, and then we will begin the formal discussion. But Rosa, you want to go?
Sure. Hi, Rod. Hi, everyone. I'm Rosa. I work at a firm, and I manage a bilateral trust fund funded by Japan. being the Japan task manager. And Rod, you know this, it's I think it's a pretty generalized issue. So my pet peeve is TFMS. But that's something I know we're continuing to address. I've worked with Musa in the past, mainly on reconciling the information in TFMS and what appears in the financial statements that get sent to the donor. So as you know, there's a time lag, and I'm going to keep working with Fatma on that. It's a pretty my little bilateral trust fund is a pretty self-sustaining trust fund. So my issues are quite different in that regard. And I know this is something, that's an ongoing conversation within firm. Thanks.
And just for everyone else, Rosa, PHRDG, what is
I'm so sorry.
Who's the donor?
Of course, Japan is the sole donor to this bilateral trust fund. So I don't per se have resource mobilization issues. It's a pretty, let's just say it can encompasses rather a pretty broad range of issues it supports, but most recently in the previous years, it's been focusing on higher education skills development. So I've been working a lot with our colleagues in the AHHD1 department. And we normally get an allocation of $1.6 million a year. So it really is, I term it a small but mighty fund because it is an underfunded sector at the bank.
Okay, thank you, Rosa.
Thanks.
Caroline Manlund.
Thank you, Rod. So I am the task manager for the India Trust Fund. So this is a trust fund that the bank has with India, which dates back to 1998. It's been replenished a couple of times. The last agreement we had with India was in 2015. So this is a trust fund that covers a number of areas in energy, agriculture, health, and so forth. So many sectors are covered. However, this fund has expired last year. So our challenge has been to sort of renew it or extend it with India. So I think for us, the biggest challenge is really around resource mobilization, which colleagues have alluded to in their presentations. The second area for me has been around disbursements. And this is mainly linked to the COVID pandemic situation we all faced last year. So the few projects that were being implemented were sort of stalled, but progress is being made this year. So maybe that's it for the India Trust Fund. It's quite a small trust fund, but an important one. Interestingly enough, India is very strong in the health sector. And that's why we're really pushing to renew this trust fund to look at how we can work with India in health and pharmaceuticals. And they're also very, very strong on PPP models. So that is also an area we would really like to push with India. Thank you, Rod.
Okay. Joel Molel.
Yes. Good afternoon, Rod. Good afternoon, everyone. As probably you have seen, I'm managing two funds. NTCF, which is the Nigerian Technical Cooperation Fund, and also China Trust Fund. NTCF, which is the Nigerian, is a unique fund because Nigeria is the only RMC which has a trust fund within the bank. And this fund was established in 2004, and it has been running ever since, although with some few challenges here and there. It funds activities, mostly soft, if you would call it, activities, studies, and similar activities, or GA, things like that. So, and mostly the challenges that we have been having is around the. I think it's very unique to NTCF itself. One of them is something which we have done away with around co-management of the fund. When it was established, it was being managed both by the bank and the Nigerian government. But this is something which we are trying to align right now with the trust fund policy to make sure that we don't have issues. In terms of resource mobilization, it's not really an issue because the fund itself is a spin-off of the Nigeria Technical Fund, which is a co-financing facility run by FIST, but then the proceeds from that fund comes to NTCF. So it's a very unique fund which is within the bank. Briefly around the Chinese Trust Fund, I think this is the oldest fund that we still have, established in 1996. It's currently having very small amount of money, but I think it is one of the most difficult funds to run. It's because it's the only fund which is still tied. So one of the reasons why the money has not been able to move quickly has been the fact that it is substantially, it has a substantial involvement of China. That is because it's tied. So that's where we've been trying to make sure that we close the fund so we can negotiate a new one. And that is how that is what we have been doing over the last couple of about 1 or 2 years. Yeah, I think those are the major things around the funds that I have at the moment. Thank you, Rod.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Jihan, do you want to quickly just introduce yourself and the funds that you are responsible for?
Sure. Hi, Jihan. I work with my colleagues in firm. I'm not responsible for any bilateral trust fund, Roderick, but I oversee some trust funds.
Yeah.
Including the climate finance. Now that Ada has left.
Yeah.
Climate finance, ADFI, and making finance work for Africa.
And you'll be spending on your time on Gates and Rockefeller as well. So.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, but Jihan's a part of the firm team as someone you can reach out to. And then Fatma, you want to quickly introduce yourself? Many of you probably know Fatma from her. She's taken over from Musa in terms of some of the TFMS issues. So when you have TFMS requests, Fatma is your one of your go-to people.
Okay, thanks, Rod. Okay, so I am the assistant to all of you regarding TFMS, and well, I'm somehow managing part of the trust funds, technical side of it. That's all. So I'm happy to work with you and help you.
Fatma, you are not giving yourself due because you also handle the brown bags, as well as the BOS, as well as will be instrumental in some of the changes that we are doing with the intranet.
Yeah. So yeah, especially in intranet, that's going to help a lot of the trust fund managers.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the future.
Okay, and then last person, just Alistair just joined. Alistair is a part of firm 2. Alistair, you want to just introduce yourself? We are just, I know we are running a little bit late, everyone, but I thought it was important for us to do this so that we know who we have amongst us, because not only is this meant for you to get to know firm, but it's also always meant for you to get to know each other as well. Alistair?
Okay, yeah, hi everyone. So my name's Alistair. For those of you who don't know me, I sit in firm 2. I'm the focal point for the ag and the water departments, which means that I'm also the focal point for any ag or water trust fund. So I see there's a few familiar names on the call today, which is great to see. In addition, I cover some donor relationships, in particular the EC and European or EC or EU donors, including EIB and EBRD. So I've also had contact with some of you about the challenges we've been having with the European Commission recently, because I know they donate to some of your funds. yeah, good to be connected with you all. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Alistair. Fatma, can you put the presentation back on? And we will share this presentation with all of you at the end, just to talk a little bit more. Go back to the previous page, Fatma. Sorry, just no, one more before. Yeah. So I did want to say, and we weren't not necessarily planning on doing the round of introductions, but I thought it was important because, as I was saying, it is important that you have the connection with firm, but it's also important that you have connection amongst yourselves. I mean, there are a number of people that brought up issues that are cross-cutting, and so, you know, having or knowing the other trust fund managers is important, and it's something that we will also distribute so that all trust fund managers know who the other trust fund managers are, so that you can reach out amongst yourselves as well. But in addition to that, you know, we do want to talk a bit, and I'll present quickly some of the things that we are working on to improve trust fund management at the bank. And again, we'll share the presentation later so that we're happy to delve into any of these areas a little bit more later. Okay, Fatma, next slide. Initiatives underway. So listen, one of all of the things that you're pointing out, or that you have pointed out, you know, except for a resource mobilization, which we're going to have a dedicated session on resource mobilization on the 29th. And a number of people from firm will be leading that session to talk about what some of the best practices are in resource mobilization, which was really driven by the fact that 14 of the responses that we had from last year on the SMCC survey came back as resource mobilization. So we specifically wanted to set up a session on that. On the slide, these are a couple things that we have been working on to better improve trust fund management. The first one, and I'll point out a couple of these. The trust fund policy. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of the trust fund policy. The last policy was done 15 years ago, 2006, when we had a very different platform of trust funds. And the goal of the policy really is to figure out how we bring greater clarity to the overall framework of trust funds and make it meaningful for donors, trust fund managers, as well as users. And so there are guiding principles around the trust fund policy. There are changes to the trust fund policy. And again, this is all has gone through benchmarking, consultations, as well as will be presented to the board in October. So it's not approved yet, but you know, knock on wood, I think it will be approved, and it will allow us to have a bit more of a structured dialogue and a structured approach to trust funds. Many of the things that you've pointed out in terms of just being clear on who does what to whom and when will be addressed in the policy. We're going to go into a little bit more of that in detail shortly. The next big thing that I'll talk about is the trust fund and co-financing accreditation module. This is a requirement for all trust fund managers in order to manage a trust fund. In the past, there has been a fair amount of turnover in trust funds, and trust fund managers were saying, we don't know where to start. We don't know what's different from the bank's processes and procedures, and maybe the organization we were at before, the World Bank, the EBRD, or maybe another developed MDB. So this was developed over a number of years to be able to give you know, both trust fund managers as well as users of trust fund managers the details of what is expected from the managers, what's expected from firm, what's expected from trust fund managers, what role procurement plays, TFMS policies. So if you haven't done it, I would strongly encourage you to do it. And in fact, it is a requirement. And you will see that I think you will, when we go into a little bit more of the details of what it covers, you will see the benefit for both yourself as well as those who you're working with. The more clarity we have on roles and responsibilities and on how to do things, the better. TFMS upgrades. We know that TFMS is not a perfect system, right? And it is the best thing that we have right now, and it has many faults. But over a number of years, the team has been working on fixes for the system. But there's a lot of manual intervention, and there's a lot of things that you need to reach out to firm for, basically because as firm is the oversight body, if you make certain changes, it has to come through firm. But there are certain things that you can do on your own and certain information that you can get from the system. And so some of the upgrades that are being done are meant to facilitate that. One of the most important ones that is being undertaken is the trust fund dashboard, which is going to allow you, users, as well as a limited set of donors and board members, the ability to drill down into the activities that have been financed by trust funds. So you'll be able to see it by high five. You'll be able to run queries on the system. It's something that is in the process of being launched on a soft basis, just amongst a few users to test it out. But I think you will appreciate the information that you'll get from it. The next thing is the DevEx tool for partnership officers in sectors. This is something that's new, that's been launched. A number of you have signed up for it. It is a tool for resource mobilization. And I won't go into too much detail now because the team will talk about it in the session next week in terms of resource mobilization, but it is something that's meant to enable you to do resource mobilization intelligence, so donor intelligence, and to understand who's funding some of the areas that you're interested in. Then firm intranet upgrade, which will be an important landing point for a lot of the information that that firm will be putting out. Next slide, please, Fatma. You can skip to the next one. So I don't know how many of you have been involved in or at least seen the trust fund. It's on eBoard now, so feel free to go and read the entire thing. But there are a couple key changes to that are being proposed to the policy, and those really came out of lessons learned from previous desk reviews, as well as consultations that the bank has had around trust funds, namely that. As well as reviews that the bank that have been done on trust funds. There was a BDEV study that was done earlier this year about trust funds, and a couple of those lessons learned were really that larger, better resourced trust funds focused on particular areas were performed better than smaller, fragmented funds that have rotating staff. It's pretty clear why. The second thing was that the bank, and the benchmarking that the bank did, the bank is the only MDB that does grants only, right? And when we can see, we were also amongst EBRD, the Asian Development and the Inter-American Development Bank, we were also we were the smallest trust fund platform because there's only so much technical assistance that you can do. and it really inhibited us from having dialogue with certain donors because they wanted to deploy a different set of instruments. In the past, in order to deploy different instruments, you had to convert into a special fund, which we saw was the case with CEFA and many others who went the route of special fund versus doing trust funds because of the limit. We are hoping that that will disappear once we institute a new trust fund policy. The other key difference was really the thresholds. Previously, to do a bilateral trust fund, it took $1 million, and to do a multi-donor trust fund, it took $2 million. Those thresholds are in the spirit of having larger trust funds that are better resourced. Those thresholds are being proposed to go to 3 and 5 million. The other significant change is really around the thresholds for approval, which many trust fund managers have seen as inhibiting the bank's ability to approve things quickly. We call it the free limit, or the bank free limit. And so that's being proposed to go for bilateral trust funds to go from 100,000 to 300,000, and from 5 to 750 for multi-donor trust funds. This is significant just in terms of speeding up, hopefully, disbursement. For some of you, it won't make a big difference because your amounts are much larger than that, but for many, it may make a big difference. The final thing I would say about the policy and the big, impact that it will have is on a new vehicle, which is a project-specific vehicle. Today, if you can either, coming to the bank, you can set up a trust fund, or you can do co-financing through a framework arrangement. There was nothing really in between for either smaller one-off grant contributions to specific projects, or for co-financing that was not going to be ongoing. The result of that means that it's heavy to partner with the bank. You either have to set up a trust fund, which takes time, or you have to set up a co-financing arrangement. This vehicle is meant to be to solve that issue. We saw where donors were coming and saying, well, we want to fund one specific project that the bank is undertaking for $500,000. This is a vehicle which is at several other MDBs that will allow them to do that. So that's a significant change, and hopefully this will bring more opportunity for non-traditional donors, i.e. foundations, philanthropies, and others that may not want to have a long-term relationship with the bank, but specific projects, or it's a way for them to get to know the bank and then to be able to, to do something more meaningful later. So next slide, Fatma. Another important piece of the trust fund policy it will be accompanied by guidelines. And let my colleague Caroline just talk a little bit about the thought process behind these guidelines and the role that they will play and how it will help you as trust fund managers.
Yes, thank you, Roderick. Colleagues, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so thank you, Roderick. So basically, to follow up on to what Roderick has said, the purpose really of these guidelines would be to accompany the new trust fund policy and really to ensure a smooth and consistent implementation of the policy. So on this slide, you'll see the different sections that we plan to address in these guidelines. And of course, we'll be happy to get feedback from you on other areas to include. So that first key area would be around a summary of the trust fund policy itself, just highlighting the key changes in this new policy that Roderick has just outlined. The next section will be on how to establish and manage a trust fund. So here we will be clearly explaining the process for establishing trust funds, including the Standing Committee on Partnerships process, where all new trust funds need to go through. There's a special process for that. So we'll be clarifying the process. The next point we'll be looking at is operationalizing trust funds, particularly around the importance of having operational guidelines that really specify how these trust funds would be implemented. So basically outlining the operational modalities of each of these trust funds. And these would also include a results measurement framework. So these are things we think are very important that should accompany trust funds, and in particular, multi-donor trust funds. On a case-by-case basis, some bilateral trust funds would require operational guidelines. So if that is the case, they will also, follow this process. Now, the next one, which is on the use of grant resources. In these sections, we are clearly explaining how to build a pipeline of projects, of proposals, which you are already familiar with. Either it's a call for proposal, either it's ad hoc proposals, or it's proposals that are received because of specific needs. So these will also be clearly explained in the guidelines. We also go ahead to talk about the types of activities that can be funded under these trust funds. That is bank executed and recipient executed projects. And of course, they need to use bank rules, policies, and procedures. So that's the procurement rules, disbursement rules, and of course, rules related and policies related to sanctions and so forth. I mean, aligning to the bank's policies. In this area also, we'll look at a point that has systematically come up in the exchanges we've had with you with regards to challenges on trust funds, which is around resource mobilization. So we would also include sections on how to mobilize resources, especially in terms of replenishing resources of existing trust funds, how to make a business case, and so forth. Because one of the challenges we've seen, come across very strongly is really predictability around funding, which then impacts implementation or delivering on the mandates of the trust fund, or implementing the strategic plan, or launching even call for proposals because there are no resources. We will also be including a section on how to communicate on trust funds to make it more visible, communicating with the donors, and so forth. Now, with regards to the section on financial instruments that Roderick has just mentioned, there will be clear guidelines to explain the operational modalities for non-grant instruments. So here we're referring to reimbursable grants, loans, equity, and guarantees. So through the guidelines, we will be explaining how to, the operational modalities for these instruments. In terms of governance and administration, I think you are all familiar with the need to have processes, governance processes in place. So again, the role of the oversight committee, the role of the technical review committee, and any other relevant committee that would be required for the new instruments that are being proposed. An issue that has come up strongly, again, is around staffing. So we aim to see how we can address some of the staffing issues and what the options are in terms of staffing. So under this section on governance and administration, we would also be attempting to discuss what are the core staffing, what is the core staffing complement required for a trust fund, at least to get the trust fund functional. Because one of the commitments we make to donors when we establishing these trust funds is the fact that we have the capacity to implement them. So we'll also be looking at staffing arrangements. We'll be looking at budgeting, as well as a key area that is very important, reporting and auditing of trust funds. Hence, I think when I refer to the operational guidelines, I did make reference to a results measurement framework that needs to be put in place to ensure that we are reporting adequately to the donor, and it is clear who is responsible for reporting as it relates to the implementation of the trust fund, a project that has been approved under the trust fund. So the last area we'll be looking at will also be how to close a fund or even extend the duration of a trust fund. So in terms of closing a trust fund, the different steps required to ensure that we close the trust fund the right way and to avoid any reputational risks from the bank. We will also be looking at the requirements if a donor wants to withdraw from the fund and so forth. So this is also something we will be highlighting in the operational guidelines. And the last area would be around the project-specific vehicle. What are the operational modalities for the bank to receive resources from a wide range of partners to really implement project-specific projects under this vehicle? So maybe I'll stop here. I think I've addressed the point on resource mobilization already, so I think I'll stop here. And over to you, Rod. Thank you.
Yeah. I see a question in the chat asking if these guidelines will replace individual trust fund operational manuals.
No, the idea is not to replace trust fund operational manuals for a very simple reason, is the fact that each trust fund has its specificities. What we're saying through the guidelines is what are some of the key areas or key elements that should feature in the guidelines for trust funds. So it's certainly not going to replace your operational guidelines for your specific trust fund, but will help you in developing guidelines for your trust fund in terms of procurement, also disbursements, and so forth. They need to have operational guidelines. They need to have a results measurement framework, and so forth. So it's really to accompany you as you develop your respective operational guidelines for your trust funds.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. Listen, we are at 2 o'clock now, and I know that I would ask if we can just go for a little bit longer. We have probably got another 2 or 3 minutes to walk through the presentation, but I do want to stop and ask if there's any questions, right, at this point, or any comments on kind of any of the things that we've spoken about, and then we'll continue on.
Hello, may I come in?
Please.
Yes, thank you, Roderick, and thank you, colleagues, for all those informations, very useful. My question is around the investment part, because that seems to be one of the main areas for improvement in the new policy. How is it going to speak to the general investment policy of the bank? For instance, if we are designing a public operations or a non-sovereign operations that also has some elements of trust funds, how do we go about it? And especially when it comes to an investment program.
Yeah, so again, as we begin to roll out the financial instruments, and if you're talking about equity specifically.
Equity, yes, and debt.
Yeah, and debt. So there will be guidelines that will have to be set up, and some of them have already been set up. I mean, if you're doing equity, you will follow the general procedures and the guidelines that the bank has on doing equity. There is a systems concern that needs to be worked out in terms of how trust funds make sure that they link up with the systems that are used, the equity system. But that's something that will have to be worked out, Francois. And it's certainly a need. And there's a couple of funds that are already doing equity. CEFA, FAPA were doing equity even before CEFA changed to a special fund. FAPA has done a couple equity investments, and so we'll certainly, or the fund that wants to begin to look at those instruments, we will work with them obviously to figure out what the modalities and the procedures are. but it's a need, and it's something that the policy is meant to open up to.
Yeah. Now I'm anticipating on the question between, the sort of linkages that we can establish between a fund like the YEI MTTF and probably what you have heard of the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks, which is being developed. So my question is really around that. As we're developing those two things in parallel, they might have to speak to each other at some point. And I see this policy as providing the opportunity for that. So, and that is why I'm asking this question. Thank you.
No, thank you. Mary Claire, I see your hand up. Is that an old question or a new?
Thank you. It's a new question. Actually, I had the opportunity to read the new trust fund policy and even provided some comments. I noticed that there was an annex that was providing difference between trust fund and special fund. But again, as we discussed, even for setting like new special fund or trust fund, I see that there is always some confusions about difference between trust fund and special fund. And today, with this new policy, the only difference actually would be on the amount targeted in the fund. Also, the approval level, since special fund goes to governing board of governors, while trust fund go to to board of directors, but also the governance structure, like governing council, oversight committees, etc. But while people discuss, you see that there is still some confusion about separating the two. And to be honest, I don't see now the relevance of having a special fund in case now trust funds have ability to provide other financial instruments. And this new policy don't provide guidance on the management of special funds. So I just want to seek clarity on how this can be addressed so as this difference is clarified, or they look at the relevance of having different guidelines for special fund and trust fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie-Claire. So first off, the policy won't cover special funds, and special funds. It's really because special funds have unique characteristics, and they have guidelines that are apart from the policy, right? The most important difference in the past has been the use of instruments. That you could only do grants in trust funds, and you could do a range of other instruments in special funds. Also, size. Special funds tend to be much larger, over 100 million, or doing pretty specific arrangements. Maybe there's a special hosting arrangement or a special governance arrangement that's outside of the standard trust fund policy. So those are but the major reason that people were doing special funds was really because of instruments. As that begins to disappear in this new policy, people won't have to go through what is a long process of setting up a special fund, because the Board of Governors meets once a year, and therefore you would need to find a slot on the agenda of the Board of Governors or do something exceptional in order to set up a special fund. So the big differences were instruments previously. That's disappearing. So you can do some of if approved, you will be able to do some of these instruments in a trust fund. The governance structure, because it goes to the Board of Governors. If there's a reason that you want it to go to the Board of Governors, which in some cases there are funds that have wide political intentions, that they would like it to be to go to the level of the Board of Governors, and or from a size standpoint, which quite honestly there's not a size limit to trust funds, but if you're going to have to get things approved by the Board of Governors anyway, maybe you opt to go the route of a special fund because you have something specific or peculiar to your fund. Does that answer your question, Marie-Claire?
Yes, thank you. But again, maybe it would be good to provide more clarity because, you know, what I found as benefit for a special fund is that normally special funds are solely managed by the FDB and they report to the governing council. And this would somehow avoid some issues that some trust funds are having with requirements from donors, because when a donor decides to put funds in a special fund, at some point, what they expect from the bank is to achieve the target and reporting but they don't get involved in daily management through oversight committees or something like that.
Yeah. So that depends, Marie-Claire. It depends on how you defined your operating guidelines, right? So it's probably more typical for there to be some levels of bank participation and governance structures where the donors have input than not, even in special funds.
Okay, thank you.
So it depends. Okay, listen, it's 2:08 now. Let us quickly go through the rest of the presentation if there's no other interventions at this point. And then, as I said, we will share the rest of the presentation with you. The next slide, Fatma. Trust fund, again, we talked about the co-financing accreditation module, which is something that I think everyone should, or everyone is required. If you are managing a trust fund, you are required to do it. If you are participating or on the staff or a user of trust funds, it is strongly and highly recommended because it gives you processes, procedures, systems. It talks about TFMS, both for two of the modalities of the bank, deploying resources through trust funds and through co-financing. So highly recommend that everyone do it, but it's something that's, that's available, that's been created. Next slide, Fatma. I talked about the trust fund, the dashboard, again, valuable tool that allows that allows you really to dig deep into total amount approved and committed by activities, total amount available, total amount dispersed, and for you to run some of these things on your own, as opposed to coming to, in the past, you've had to come to firm to do it. This is going to really open up the ability for you in the sectors to do it yourself, which ultimately helps with resource mobilization as well, because you can show results, you can show, by region, by high five, by sector. It should be a valuable tool. We still have some kinks to work out of it, but encourage you to use it once we have it. Next slide, Fatma. Keep going, please. DevEx. I won't spend a lot of time, but let me ask Jihan, do you want to just give a quick pitch on the session for next week and why DevEx is such a great tool?
So next week we have Alistair, my colleague Alistair, who is online now, and I will provide a brown bag on fundraising principles. So it's on the 29th of September. You're very welcome to attend. As for DevEx, Alistair can talk about this, but basically it's you have access to this. 60 people onboarded are registered, and they have access to a lot of data on donors and funders in many sectors. And as you can see in this slide, for example, if you're interested in information about health or who are the donors in the health sector, you just input health, and then you filter it by countries or regions. You can choose whether you want info on programs or on contracts or tenders, grants, etc. And then you have all the information. So you're welcome to register if you're not registered and have access to this tool, which the bank paid for, by the way. So it's not free. So you're welcome to use it. Alistair is the focal point for this.
Yeah, no, I think Alistair had to go to another meeting, but again, super valuable tool. I would strongly recommend if you are not signed up already. We've had a number of onboarding sessions. There are over 300 people at the bank that are already signed up and using it. So valuable tool that we wanted to make available to trust fund managers and other people that are responsible for partnerships. Donor tracker, we'll talk about that next week during the fundraising session. Next slide, Fatma. Brown bags. Again, we will continue with brown bags, valuable tools. Over 2,000 people have participated in the brown bags. They're meant to be, when they were in person, they were valuable times for you to connect with each other. Now that they're virtual, we want to continue that, and we want to continue having sessions like this, so that that we allow you to express needs, what you need from firm, what we can do better, and for you to get to know each other and profit from lessons learned. Next, Fatma. Intranet. This will be a spot where, when you have questions, the first place you should go is our intranet. When you want to know who is overseeing the fund or the sector that you are a part of, when you want to know, processes, procedures, this is something that's been missing, to have a repository with all of this information. So we will be rolling that out, hopefully before the end of the year, and welcome your feedback. Next slide, Fatma. Trust Fund Finder, which all of you probably know about, but it's more for users when they want to find resources. Next slide, Fatma. From a key roles and responsibilities and issues in trust fund management, I'll let you read those. This is the slide lays out some of the responsibilities, gives a bit more clarity on what firm does and what others do. The trust fund accreditation and co-financing accreditation module also goes into details on that. Next slide, Fatma, and I think we're one more. Yes, so I front loaded this a little bit. We talked about this up front, but listen, we would love to hear from you. Is there a survey, Fatma?
It will be launched as when we finish.
When we sign off?
Yeah.
Listen, let me thank you first of all for your time. Sorry that we went over by 15 minutes, but let me also open it up to, are there any comments, questions that we can deal with over the next the little time that we have?
Yeah, thanks, Rod, and the team for the good presentation. I think obviously we won't have time to go into detail. I think there's a lot of good information presented here. The guidelines is certainly very much welcome. I think it will be very useful for us as fund managers to use these guidelines, to benefit from the guidelines, because we sometimes operate in a darkness. Sometimes we just do as we know how to do over the years, but it may not necessarily be the most efficient, effective way of doing things. So the guidelines certainly will help, and we look forward to start using those guidelines. The second thing I want to say is I've seen, I think it would be useful to have this presentation, if it's not already shared with us, so that we can digest some of the information and use the links to sign up for a few things. I mean, there is one particularly I haven't signed up yet, but the academy and so forth is something that I would like to do. So if I can have those links, that would help. The particular issue pertaining to the trust fund, I pretty much appreciate the context that you put in the beginning, that there are a lot of focus and attention on Africa, and then donors are willing to contribute, and they want to use the bank as a vehicle. So the question is, how can the bank position itself to be the vehicle of choice? I think that's really the starting point for us. If this is the ambition of the bank to be the vehicle of choice and mobilize these resources through trust funds, among others, then we'll have to, really shake up the internal processes of our trust fund and really prepare ourselves to be that particular vehicle of choice. And that goes through a few things. I just want to share a couple of them. One is the issue of communication. I think, we communicate, each one of us here present, in our own way, but it would be good to have a strategic approach to communication of trust fund to the donors, so that, it raises the visibility of the hard work that these trust funds are doing, the bank is doing to host this trust fund, and the result that they are delivering. So that's very important, as you mentioned yourself, to resource mobilization also. So a strategic communication that put visibility on the bank and demonstrate results that this trust fund achieve is very important. Second, your role as the coordinator or the manager of the overall bank trust fund affairs, I think is very critical. And I'm happy that you show some slide that highlights your role as a guide and technical assistant that you can provide to us to be more efficient in running trust fund. We have an experience, yes, but I think you can still add value to us in many ways by serving as sometimes a TA, that you can say, okay, listen, Mike, I think, I've been following IPPF now for some time. There are a few things that I think you can benefit from, and then how do I help you to achieve A, B, C, D, so that, we can have a resource person, a resource assistant from you, based on where you sit. You have a very broad view about trust fund management, not only in the bank, but also with the partnering institution. So you can bring that knowledge, which is my third point. So share the best practices with us from where you sit. How do we enhance effectiveness of our fund, whether it's operational effectiveness, whether it's a governance system, whether it's approach to donors or presenting results, and so forth and so forth. So these are the kind of streamlining process that we want. And I think that you or yourself start thinking about to provide to us. And the key one, which is the elephant in the room, is resource mobilization. Also, as a fund manager, we're concerned about this because this is, how we anticipate our work program. And one worry area of, we are very much concerned. This worries us a lot. So we want to work with you in a much more strategic way to anticipate resource mobilization issue. I personally don't necessarily know the donor practice, the processes and the timeline of putting a request forward to a particular donor. I don't know their budget timeline in their countries. So what I do is I just work with my oversight committee members and make a pitch, but it could be much more strategic if we know that German, US or France or UK, Denmark and all that, this is their budgeting process in the country. You want to put a request forward, do it around this time. This is how we work with you to do it and so forth. I think that will be very helpful for us. And lastly, I'm happy that colleagues from climate finance are also on this call. I think it will be good that we discuss further, because today climate financing is something that we all want to tap into. And if the bank is already hosting some of them with your assistance, I think we can benefit from those funds as well. And my suggestion would be that we keep this engagement. I think it's a very good idea that you have trust fund managers, a club like this, so that we'll be talking, exchanging best practice, and then learning from each other and improving our processes. So let me just stop here in the interest of time, and then hopefully we'll come back to some of this issue later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. I won't go into each of those because we could spend another hour talking about each one of those and what we want to to do better at firm in each one of those areas. We've done pieces of it in the past, and some of it has been cobbled together, if you will, but we can certainly get better at doing it. So anyone else, any final words?
Just a suggestion, Roderick.
Yes.
We thank firm for organizing all those brown bag series for knowledge about trust fund and special funds. But when we implement programs and projects, sometimes we face a number of challenges that maybe can be addressed if we get more knowledge on bank processes and procedures. Mainly, most of time when it comes to preparing, appraising the project and approving the projects, the operational manual of different special fund or trust fund address that. But when it comes to execution, it's where you have like legal department come in. And most of the time, it takes very long when it comes. For our own experience, for example, we implemented the trade credit guarantee, which are just 2 million. And the process was tended to be treated as like a 50 million or 100 million guarantee, which was a bit really hectic and difficult. We managed to come up with something and the projects are running, but it was really difficult. So maybe it would be good if you can organize such kind of session when we bring in like legal departments or procurement or financial management, just for us to raise some questions and get clarity on a number of processes and procedures. That will really help. And mainly legal, because I understand that from the new policy and guidelines, aspects of financial management, procurement will be addressed. But for example, we don't know which kind of agreement that the bank can enter into other than loan agreement or grant agreement or guarantee agreement. And most of our special fund or trust funds, they enter into other agreement. They have activities which are not like project focused. Like if you want to address to do work around the policy, you have to partner with another organization, and you want to release like very limited amount of funds to an organization which is reputable, but you don't want to do that, and you cannot do that through a public call for proposal, for example. So those are kind of information that can be provided by legal or other departments, and I think it would be really useful for us if such kind of sessions can be organized and bring more light and increase our knowledge in legal agreements with the bank.
Yeah. Listen, I think that's a great idea, Mary Claire, and it dovetails off of what Mike was saying, which is there is a need for this type of group that is just amongst trust fund managers and dealing with some of the issues that you face, as opposed to some of the brown bags that are much more about communicating to the rest of the bank. So let us, what my takeaway is, one, continue to do these sessions. Two, it may serve for us to have, a bit of an office hours and bring in some of our functional colleagues from legal, procurement, and other areas to really address the group and deal with some of these issues as a group, as opposed to individually.
Exactly.
Okay, please, I'm looking forward to those specific things in the survey that you do from on Zoom as well after this session. Listen, time for one more comment. Is that Timothy? No? Okay. Listen, please take 5 minutes to fill out the survey once we log off, which you will have, and provide us with some feedback. We'd like to continue to do these. Let us know if it was valuable, and we will look to set up, as frequently as you would like, quite honestly. But give us the suggestion, give us the feedback. Thank you all for attending. Fatma, what do they need to do the survey?
Okay, so they will just receive the link on the browser. They just answer and send out the survey. That's it.
Super. And we will get the we'll get this presentation to you by the end of today.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.
Bye.